Hey, what's up guys? My name is Michael Westbrook. Thanks for checking out this video. This is my house in Decatur, Georgia. I've been spending a lot of time here lately for obvious reasons. So I thought I'd give you guys a little tour of the studio and talk about some of the gear in there. So let's get into it. All right, so we're in the house. The studio is kind of located in the middle of the house, right off the kitchen on one side and then our hallway on the other. As you can see, it's pretty small. Got a lot of stuff packed in here. Here's my desk. The other door over there. Chair and some guitars back there. Yeah, I'm just gonna go around the room, tell you guys about a few things. We'll get to all the guitars towards the end, but I just want to highlight some things about the studio, how I have things set up, things that make it easy for me to work quickly and easily and get good sounds with the limited amount of space and setup that I have. So here we go. So there's the door we just came in. As you can see, the Rhodes is right there. It's a late 70s Rhodes. I bought it off a guy on Craigslist probably about a decade ago. I think I paid maybe $400 for it. It's got the legs and the top and the pedal and just totally complete. So plays pretty well. It's a little squishy. I might rebuild it at some point, but it still works for me. As we move over, we've got one rack of guitars. I'll talk about each of those later. Oh, one thing too, as you can see, I've got the Rhodes. It's hooked up to a Phase 90 right now, but I always like having the Rhodes hooked up ready to go so I can just kind of jump on it whenever the inspiration strikes or I'm working on a track. I just know that it's always ready to go. You'll find that there's a number of things in my studio that are that way, that I just have set up so they're ready to go, so I can just flip a switch or hit record and go. Of course, I have acoustic paneling all throughout the room, on the walls and the ceiling, as well as a rug on the floor. That just kind of helps keep frequencies a little more balanced and get rid of slap back and weird things going on in the room. So here's my desk. Kind of like I mentioned before about having things set up, I've got two DIs there. Those are JDIs by Radial. They're just always plugged in, ready to go. If I'm doing an HX Stomp video, then I'm usually running through those. Or if I need to track bass really quick or whatever. They go straight into the Focusrite Claret 8 Pre-X. It's right there. They're just going into the stock preamps on there, which are really great. They sound real clean and real transparent. I also have this Peterson tuner there. It's always powered up, ready to go, so I can just plug in and tune and get going. Above the Focusrite, I've got a 1176 compressor clone. One cool thing about this compressor is that it has a 2-to-1 ratio, which you typically don't find on an 1176. This is great for tracking, just kind of minimizing the amount of compression going in. It's nice for just taking the tops off of things, just to even things out ever so slightly when you're tracking. Another cool thing, you can see there's a switch right there by the attack knob. That actually lengthens the attack time. Typically attack times on an 1176 are really fast. That lengthens them up and kind of puts it more in the range of an LA2A. Just gives it a little more variety, makes it a little more versatile and get some different kind of tones out of it. Over here we've got some pre's. On top, something kind of unique. It's a pair of pre's that are out of a console, pre's and EQs out of a Neotech console. Neotechs are from Chicago, most famously used by Steve Albini. Below that is a pair of 7th Circle Audio Neve preamp clones that sound really, really great. No EQs or anything, just great sounding preamps. So as we move over, kind of going with the theme of having things hooked up continually, I have this Eventide H9. It is routed through my interface so that in Pro Tools I can send stuff out and essentially use it as an outboard effects unit for reverbs or delays or whatever. Beside that, another thing that's routed through my interface that always stays plugged up is the Tascam M208. Great little old school console. Has that kind of classic Tascam preamp lo-fi overdrive. It actually sounds great on bass guitar too. It just has a richness and a fullness to it in the low end. It has a cool vibe to it. One other way that I have things set up and ready to go is that I use a 2-notes captor, which you can see directly to the right of the matchless there. This allows me to record my guitar amp silently. Basically, it's a load box. The one I have is an 8 ohm, which works with the majority of my amps. But that way I can set the matchless up, or my deluxe reverb, or even this Marshall, and record them silently, which means I can record guitars at any time of day or night without making any noise. It sounds great. Watch some of my other videos if you haven't seen them about recording direct using cab IRs. The 2-notes captor is always plugged up into my interface and ready to go. Here's kind of the pile of gear. You might recognize some of the amps from my previous videos. A couple extra pedals laying around. There's my current pedal board down there. Over here we've got some mics. That's my Lawson 47 clone, Neumann 47 tube mic clone. Amazing sounding mic. A little vocal booth shield thing there that we use for voiceover work that me and my wife do. A few more guitars back here in the corner. I'll tell you guys about those coming up soon. A chair and a bookshelf. Okay, we're going to jump over and talk about some of the guitars now. I know I didn't cover everything in the studio and how everything's routed and all that stuff, but if you have questions, hit me up in the comments. I'll also put some more information in the description below. All right, so first we'll start out with this. This is actually a guitar that belongs to my wife's dad. We've had it for a few years now. Crazy story about this guitar. When me and my wife were dating, she was starting to learn acoustic guitar, so she went home to visit her parents and took an acoustic guitar with her. And she walked in and her mom was like, "Why do you have that guitar?" And she's like, "Well, I'm learning how to play and stuff." She's like, "Well, you didn't need to bring it." She's like, "We've got Dad's old Gibson in the closet back there." And she was like, "What?" And her mom was like, "Yeah, there's an old Gibson back in the closet of your dad's. Like, you know about it." And she was like, "No, I don't. I've never seen that guitar in my life. What are you talking about?" And so they went back there and they pulled it out, and this was it right here. It's a, I believe it's a 65 or a 66 J45. It originally had an adjustable bridge right here, that when she, at some point later down the road, she brought it up to Atlanta because it needed a little bit of work. It literally had the same strings on it that it had, probably 20 or 30 years ago when she found it. So it just needed a little work. And one thing that I had done was to take the adjustable bridge out and put just the regular fixed bridge here. One cool thing that that the luthier did is he actually routed this out and filled it back in with rosewood. So this whole piece is original, other than just fitting the new bridge in there, which I thought was super cool, not to have to replace the whole thing. Other than that, it's in pretty good shape and sounds amazing. So next up we have this, which is probably my most recently acquired guitar. Actually, I take that back. Second most recently acquired guitar. This is a newer, maybe 2019 Fender American Original Series Stratocaster. It's a 60s. Great guitar. I actually was looking for one of these because they have a slightly thicker neck on them. And I like the feel of a thicker neck. I actually had one of the Fender Road Worn 60 Strats previously that looked very similar. It was just, aged and worn a little bit. And those are great guitars, but the neck was really small and really skinny, and I have large hands. So I searched out and found one of these and really dug it. And so, yeah, it's kind of been my Strat since then. Next up is my 57 reissue Goldtop Les Paul. This is a custom shop reissue Les Paul. This was my main guitar for years and years. I've played so many gigs on this. I've had it refretted once. Definitely could use some work now, but just an amazing guitar. It's the most money I've ever spent on a guitar, but it honestly is probably one of the best guitars I've ever owned. It just sounds amazing, plays amazing, and is just always held up, and never really had any issues with it. Just plug it in and it sounds great. Next up is my Gretch Duo Jet. Great guitar. The only modifications I've had done to this guitar are that I had the bridge pinned so that it doesn't move. Typically Gretch's, the bridge is what we call a floating bridge, and so it actually moves. The only thing that's holding it to the guitar is the pressure from the strings. But if you kind of bump it with your wrist, or you're strumming and you hit it, or even just resting your hand on it, sometimes if you have lighter strings, can cause this to move. So what people do is they call it pinning it, but basically there are two like small little screws, I guess, underneath this that are drilled into the top of the guitar, and then there is routed a little hole, and actually this one was drilled through. There's different ways to do it. I won't get into that too much, but basically it just allows that bridge to sit on those screws, the screw head, so it doesn't move. But if you take the strings off, like, you can still pull it off. It's just sitting down on those screws so that it can't move. I had that done, and then I actually changed the bridge pickup out for a TV Jones. This guitar came with these pickups, which are Dynasonics, that are kind of like a single coil type pickup, but I just wanted a little more meat. I didn't love how these were with overdrive as much, so this is kind of a typical Filtertron. I think this is the Classic Plus, which has just a little more output, not too hot, just kind of a really great bridge sounding, or bridge Filtertron. One fun fact about this guitar is that the day I got this guitar, me and my wife got engaged. And I actually gave my wife and proposed with a black diamond ring. So it's just kind of fitting that this is a black guitar. The next guitar up in the rack is my Martin HD28. This is actually an anniversary model. So it's a 2008 HD28. Great guitar. I actually had a newer J45, and I just never really loved it, and so I sold it and bought this guitar, and I just love this guitar. It's got so much body. It's real loud and punchy. Just kind of my go-to acoustic for most things. One fun thing about this guitar is on the back of the headstock is a sticker that my daughter gave me. Kind of get in close so you guys can see that. So it's a cactus unicorn that is puking a rainbow. I'm not sure what that signifies, but somebody thought of that. Silvertone Jupiter, 2 gold foils. I actually had a buddy who bought one of these. I was with him up in Nashville years back at, for a little while, Tom Bukovac had a store called Second Gear, and he bought a guitar just like this from Bukovac's place. I think it actually was one of his. So, but this one is just one that I found at the shop, and I walked in, and I've always been looking for one since my buddy bought one. They're such cool guitars, have a really cool sound. And they had this one on the floor for $250, which is crazy cheap. Typically the cheapest you see them is like maybe $500 or $600, but typically, you know, they're like $700, $800, $900 depending on the condition. But you know, this one's definitely got some cosmetic stuff going on. We're missing some of the sparkle on the back here and the black finish, but other than that, it's a great guitar. I had to put a strap peg down here. It was missing that, but man, other than that, it was set up, it plays great and stays in tune, so can't really complain. Oh, and it's really light. Next up is my Fender American vintage Telecaster. It's a 62 reissue, I believe. This is a guitar that I've actually had the longest of any of my guitars. I've bought and sold a lot of guitars over the years, so I don't have a lot of cool guitars that I used to have, but I have held on to this one. Just great telly. I changed out the pickups. It's got Fralins in it that are 5% overwound. They're a little darker, a little hotter. The reason for that was switching guitars and playing different guitars, especially when my Les Paul was kind of my main go-to guitar. If I wanted to pick up the telly with the stock pickups in it, they sounded great, but they were brighter. They were not as loud, and I wanted something that would be a little better match. Now this doesn't match totally. You know, it's still brighter and it's still less output than my Les Paul, but having the 5% overwound pickups just lets me make that transition a little easier and a little better. I still pull the tone knob back a little bit to take some of the top end off, but other than that, it's a pretty good match. But between you know, this guitar and going to other guitars, can't go wrong with a Tele. All right, next up is my Fender P bass. This is actually a mid-'80s made in Japan Fender P bass. I bought it several years back. I had a grandmother who passed away, and she left me just a tiny little bit of money. And I thought, what better way to remember her than to buy an instrument? Because I know that I would keep it around, and I would always think of her whenever I played it. So there she is. By far the dustiest instrument in the studio, and the least used, but still cool to have around, is an old Ibanez Acoustic. You might ask, why do you have that around? That is very different than your other guitars. But the reason why I have this around is because I have it high strung. I have no idea if this is going to be in tune or not, but yeah. So if you don't know, this is kind of a common thing to do in studios, and some people call it like a Nashville tuning, but what it is it's the high strings off of a 12-string pack, and you use it to double strummed acoustic parts to kind of give you a 12-string sound. Strummed or picking or whatever, but it's just a cool sound to have to layer into a track. The nice thing about that tuning is that it works on even lower end guitars. You just want something that's going to stay in tune that you can layer in the track. For me, I don't have a lot of extra money to have into a guitar that's going to sit around and go unused most of the time, because I don't use this tuning a lot, but it's nice to have a guitar that I can put the high strung thing on and have for when I need it. All right, I think this is the last one, and this is my Dan Electro 12-string. Bought this from a friend many years back. I believe this is the 90s reissues. I'm not totally sure about that, but this does the trick. It's got the lipstick pickups in it. Yeah, kind of a classic 12-string. You see tons of studios with these sitting around because they are cheap, but they sound good, and they're easy to find. Thanks again for watching. I know I didn't cover everything, but if you have any questions, let me know in the comments and I'll be sure to answer them. I know there's lots of little things that I didn't mention or didn't talk very long about. So I will definitely give you any and all info I can about whatever you want to know. Whether that's about the instrument or my workflow or the studio gear, whatever, just ask. I'm here. Not going anywhere anytime soon. I will link a lot of gear and a lot of stuff that I use down in the description. As much as I can, those will be Amazon affiliate links. I do make a small commission from those if you buy something from them. Obviously right now that helps me out a lot with the kind of the current state of the world. But no pressure, just check them out, see if you can find something you might use. I will also say I'm super grateful for how the channel has done this year. I just started this in January, and the response and the views have been amazing. I had no idea what to expect or how the channel would grow, but I'm really thankful for everybody who has watched and subscribed and hit the thumbs up button. Also, thanks to everyone who's bought my recent HX Stomp pack. I'm currently working on some Helix presets, and coming up soon I will be giving away a free HX Stomp effects patch, so be on the lookout for that. If those things are out already, then they will be linked in the description as well. All right, well, you guys stay safe out there, and until next time, I'll see you out there.